אנחנו באים בזמנים קשים בכוונה.
זה לא זמן קשה.
יאללה.
טוב זה מצלם, רבי יהודה, אתה יכול לדבר.
So welcome to the weekly shiur. Today we're on the 6th day of Sivan, 5776, in the middle of the Holy Apple Junction, Tapuach, as it's known. And last week, unfortunately, our class was cut short due to the troop standing over here who broke up the shiur, you might say. Anyways, as we were saying last week, and we're continuing also this week to discuss the subject about fortifications here. In fact, right now, every single stop, I came this morning, I came from Elon Moreh, my house, some 21 kilometers from here. Every bus stop that I had passed by on the way here, I noticed that there's a new sign here. It's requesting, there's even a verse there. It's written in funky Torah scroll writing. Maybe we can get it in the camera. And it says there that the security, the army base of the area here is asking people to please stand behind the fortifications. So now they have official signs here, and using a little bit of Torah language, you should be very, very careful. You should be very, very careful with your life. So because of the fact that we're extremely careful with our lives and we want to live, that's why we're giving this class on the opposite side of the fortifications here. Let me start off with an unbelievable story, of course true. Some 24, 25 years ago, there was a dispute on a settlement not too far away from here, approximately 10 kilometers south of us, in a place called Shiloh. There was a dispute going on for a couple of years between the inhabitants itself, between the residents themselves, whether they should put up a fence or not put up a fence around the settlement of Shiloh. There were people that were for it, there were people that were against it. One day, the chief of staff, then, his name was Raphael Eitan, people called him Raful, and he happened to be a very, very interesting person, this Raful. That was his nickname, Raful. He was not religious, and in fact, there were sides of him that were anti-religious. But he still was a very, very special person. Why do I say that? Fact is that he was a very, very simple kind of person. Straightforward, simple, I guess you could call it Hamish kind of guy. He was the kind of person that when he got into, after he retired from the army being the chief of staff, he went into politics. He was, for a short stint, he was a member of Knesset of the defunct Tchia party. And he, as a member of the party, he was entitled, they gave him a brand new Volvo car. Raful said that his old beat-up truck is good enough for him, and he gave back that fancy brand new, whatever year it might have been, Tafshin something, I don't remember, but he gave it back to the Knesset and refused to use it. How many guys do you have like that? He was a very down-to-earth kind of person, kind of guy you can go to his house and have a talk with him. He was a moshavnik. Anyways, the chief of staff then, Raful, came down to the settlement of Shiloh, and he said, listen, I'm tired of this dispute, ongoing dispute. On Sunday morning, the army is coming down, and we are going to put a fence around the settlement of Shiloh. I don't want to hear any more arguments about the subject. I've had it. Okay? That week, on Shabbat, on the Sabbath, the portion of the week that we read back then was the portion of the week called Shlach, where Moses sends the 12 spies to check out what's going down in the land of Israel. That was the subject of the portion of the week. So after Shabbat was over on Saturday night, a woman, one of the residents, a female resident of Shiloh, took her car and went up or down to the Galil, where the chief of staff lived, Raful lived, and she went to his moshav, to his house. She knocks on the door, he answers the door, and she says, my name is such and such. By the way, she still lives to this day in Shiloh. I happen to know her personally. And she says, I'm from Shiloh. The chief of staff, Raful, hears the word Shiloh. Oh my God, here it comes again. I don't want to hear about this. So anyways, she says, I didn't come to talk about the fence. I just came to talk about the portion of the week. Oh, in that case, now remember this, he's kind of like an anti-religious person. You have to give him credit. You have to take off your kippah or your hat, whichever one you have. Give him a little bit of credit. He says, okay, if it's about the parsha, come on inside. She comes inside and listen to what she says. And remember the lesson. All our lives, we must remember this lesson. She says the following. Moses sends the spies and he tells them to be aware of two signs. Be aware of two signs. Number one, be aware that when you come to the land of Israel, if you notice that the cities are fortified, they're behind walls and barbed wire, etc., whatever they had back then, know that this is a tremendously good sign for us Jews in the desert. Why? This means that the residents are weak and they need exterior types of fortifications in order to exist. This is a sign that they are weak, not strong, weak. That is the message that's being given. Number two, if you notice that when you're spying out the land, espionage, when you're checking out the land of Israel, if you notice that people are living in open cities or they're on the correct side of the fortifications like we are here and not on the incorrect, the ghetto side of the wall over here, that is a bad sign for us Jews in the desert. That means that the inhabitants are very strong, secure, and believe in themselves. They are not afraid. Those were the two signs. Now listen, open up your ears closely. The chief of staff, Raful, hears this about the portion of the week, and he says two words, no fence. To this day, 24 years later, there is no fence in the settlement, around the settlement of Shiloh. There is no fence around there. An amazing story. One more story. He was
a religious guy here and he would have made an excuse. Yeah.
He would have built a double fence.
Okay, anyway, here's another personal story, okay? Personal witness. Listen to this story. Unbelievable. I had to do some fundraising. In Los Angeles, a few other cities. So I was at my dad's house, and being used to living in Israel, my door is usually open to get some air during the day. So I'm in LA. my door's like a little bit open in the house. Not something that you have very often. You see something you don't see too often in Los Angeles. Anyways, it's about 11 o'clock, 11:30, kind of like this time of the class here. And all of a sudden, I'm looking towards the door, and I see that there's like a foot, 1 foot, like next to, like coming like inside the door. So I, of course, immediately, you see somebody's like foot in your door, I immediately, you know, this is not Elon Morel over here, baby. This is Los Angeles, the city of angels, Hollywood. So anyway, I get up, and I see in front of me this he's wearing like some kind of cowboy hat, this white fellow. Hope I didn't insult anybody by calling them white. I'm not racist by calling him white. You don't have to suspect me. Anyways, this white guy standing at the door, and I said, "Can I help you with anything?" Folks, hold on to your seats, put on seat belts. There's definitely no insurance in this fortification here. There's definitely no insurance here on this fortification here. The guy looks at me. Now, as you probably can tell, I don't have much of an Israeli accent. No one has ever suspected me of having an Israeli accent, especially when I speak English. He looks at me and he says, "Hey, are you from Israel?" Okay, get this. Are you from Israel? I'm like stunned, shocked. I just can't believe it. I said, "How'd you know?" I mean, like, wow. How did you know that? He says, "I could tell by the way you stand. I could tell by the way you're standing at the door that you are from Israel." And he said, I must have the wrong address. I'm sorry." And he turned around and he left. That has always echoed in my mind. You must be from Israel. You must be from Israel. No accent. You must be from Israel. By the way you're standing, I know that you're from Israel. Folks, 26 years later, 27 years later, by the way a person stands, you could tell where they're coming from. You could tell a person by where they stand. By where we stand. Are we on the ghetto? Are we going to fortify ourselves here? Or are we going to stand tall, stand proud? When the soldiers came at the beginning of the session asking us to get on the wrong side of the wall over here, Mike said a true statement. Mike said a true statement here. If we continue in this type of behavior, of fortifying our cities, our hitching stations, it's only a matter of time. The Arabs understand very clearly. It's clear to them that we're on the run. We spoke last week about how the Jews knew that the British were out when they started fortifying their institutions. It was only a matter of time. The Jewish community of Eretz Yisrael before, pre-48, they knew that it was a matter of time. And think about it, because this time it was a car that rammed in here, but they also have rocks. There's also fire bombs. There's also weapons that they have no lack of weapons, and the beat keeps on going on. So today they tell you don't stand here, but tomorrow they'll say, listen, we can't allow you to stand here either because they're throwing fire bombs, they're throwing rocks, they're shooting at people. Pretty soon we're going to have to live underground. We can't walk. And when you can't act, when you can't live a normal life, then people will leave this area because no one wants to live a life where you cannot breathe. they're always limiting your your freedom of movement. How ironic it is that the national anthem of this country is Liot Am Chovshi. What a joke that is. I mean, if you try, last week they almost arrested us. They almost arrested us for fulfilling their own national anthem of being a free people. I mean, it's really an amazing thing. They're coming here and they're threatening to arrest us for standing here. We're not blocking the traffic. We're not interfering with anybody. And still, not only that, I want to say one more thing and then we'll go on. A few of my students came to me. A few of my students, younger students who are in 9th grade, they came up to me we have every Friday we pray at the intersection of a Arab town called Beit Furik. We stop traffic for about 45 minutes and we have mincha, we have the afternoon prayers every Friday at 1 o'clock. Everyone's invited. So anyways, some of my students came up to me and said, listen, here we want to show you, we have on our cell phones, we have what happened last week at the intersection of Tapuach. So anyways, they're showing to me, I don't know how they got it. We had to start the prayers right away. I don't know how they got it. But they showed me the beginning of what happened over here last week. These are 3 students of mine. What was not seen was after they dragged us out and they let me go and I was next to the bus stop. I was just getting my tefillin straight. The chief, the head commander, the head guy, the head commander came up to me with full force and he pushed me backwards into the field. Now, yeah, it's hard to see it over here, but there's a big incline here. Right behind the bus stop, there's a big incline, and maybe you can pick it up here on the camera. There's a big incline, and the guy, with full force, he pushes me back. You know, I'm standing with tefillin. We're in the middle of words of the Holy Torah, and this person has the chutzpah, the gall, to do such a thing. I'm not running away. I'm not, you know, jumping out. I'm not yelling. Wasn't saying anything. And that's what we're dealing with over here. That's when you really want to be a free person. The governments of the world will always want to control. They always want to have control over the people, because as long as we're sheep, there is no hope. They can do whatever they want to us. Okay, let's go on. Rabbeinu Bachye mentions in his commentary on the Torah, says an unbelievable Torah here. Let's get it up here. He asked the question, Rabbeinu Bachye asked the question, we know that Abraham was a tremendously well-to-do person. How was he well-to-do? Because when they kidnapped his wife, Sarah, not only did he give Abraham and Sarah, he gave them tremendous amount of wealth and cattle, etc., and livestock, but he also gave the city of Goshen. If you notice, when the Jewish people hundreds of years later come down to Egypt, why do they immediately go to the city of Goshen? I mean, was there kosher restaurants over there? Were there kosher restaurants over there? The reason why I'm throwing this in is because I just heard a lecture the other day, about 2 days ago, how France had I don't know if it's in past tense, or France has a thriving Jewish community. Now, what was his proof? That they have more restaurants than they do in New York. I guess if you're thriving Jewish-wise, if you're thriving, man, you have to have a lot of kosher restaurants, because that is the measuring stick if you're thriving. You know what I'm saying? Wow, I didn't know that. If you're really a real Jew, if you're a God-fearing Jew, you must be connected to some restaurant, because that's the thriving Jewish community of France. They have more restaurants than even New York. Impressive. So anyways, that's why I just threw it in. Anyways, Goshen was given by Pharaoh to Sarah as compensation for the fact that he took her against her will. He kidnapped her. So the fact is that the Jewish people had the rights to Goshen. Now, maybe the Egyptian undercover, they're going to start putting guards around Goshen. Maybe we have claims to get back to Goshen one day. Who knows? We'll take care of it later. But anyways, that's the way it goes in Goshen. But back to the question of Rabbeinu Bachye. He asked a great question. He says, listen, I understand. Abraham is right now sending out, he's in a desert. He's in a desert. He's not in the Hermon over here where it's cold. He's in a desert situation. It's probably pretty hot over there. And he's giving them some bread and some water. Like, really, thanks a lot. I probably imagine that if you go through if you get captured, God forbid, and you go through the Red Cross, maybe they give you a little bit more than bread and water. So the question is, why is that? He says an unbelievable commentary on the Torah. He tells an unbelievable commentary on the Torah. He says the following, that this is the proper way to treat enemies of the Jewish people. Therefore, Abraham, of course, could have given them tremendous amounts of money and wealth and gold and silver, etc. Not only did he give them wealth, he barely gave them food, because this is the proper way to take care of enemies of the Jewish people. I mean, just think about that. That is the proper way. Here, Jews are run over, and they think they're protecting us by the fact that they put up this fortification. That's protection. Instead of eliminating our enemies and chasing them out of the land of Israel, instead of having them not being allowed to travel for a week over here, no traveling for the next, take people's licenses away, stop there's a million and one things that could be done. And they think people think that things are better because some truck came here and put down a few of these cement blocks over here. I mean, that's security. We're beefing up the security. That's where, things are better now. Things are much worse now. Things are much worse now because they see that there is no reaction, and they see that we're becoming frightened, and we're hiding behind these ghetto walls. So that's Rabbeinu Bachye. That's what he tells us. I want to get right now into an amazing point. This is all of the Torah on one leg. We're going to summarize what the problem is in a few paragraphs. We're going to summarize it and put it in your lap. Our teacher, Rav Kahana, he always taught that there are two periods of Jewish history. There are periods of Jacob and there are periods of Israel, and they're not the same. V'lo karav ze el ze kol halayla. They are not close whatsoever. What is the period of Jacob? The period of Jacob is the following. The Be'er Moshe writes, on one hand, we see that Chazal, our rabbis of blessed memory, condemn Jacob. Next week's parsha, not this week Vayetze, but next week's portion of the week. The rabbis, the Chazal, condemn Jacob on his actions. In fact, they say that because of the fact they bring in a verse from the prophet of Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, on chapter 13, I think it's the 6th verse, they bring there that because of Jacob's fear, this brought upon brazenness, this brought about strength to the enemies of the Jewish people, and it brought into the destruction of the temple. Jacob, temple? There was no temple when Jacob was around. There's no tabernacle when it's... What's going on? That's true. But such behavior of Jacob bowing down 7 times, Jacob calling Esav the wicked, we just read last week, God says, I hate Esav. I hate Esav. Not my words. I wouldn't say such a thing. But that's the words of God. That's the words of the Torah. I hate Esav. So therefore, Jacob comes and he says, he calls him my master. So on one hand, we see a tremendous criticism of Jacob. On the other hand, there are other opinions in the rabbis, in Chazal, and also the Zohar HaKadosh, that they say that Jacob did the correct action. So what's going on? What's the schizophrenic? What's going on? Either he's right or wrong. No, he was right in both cases. What do we mean? V'ber Moshe, v'admor azrol alodru. He writes an amazing Torah. He says the following, that both are correct. Jacob himself made a tremendous mistake, because Jacob, at the time where Jacob was dealing with this problem, when Jacob was coming and facing his brother after 22 years of not seeing him, this was the incorrect way to go about facing. He should have stood proud and he would have been victorious, but he didn't. And therefore, there's criticism against Yaakov during his period of history. On the other hand, the compliment, when Jacob is complimented, that is talking about when the Jews are subservient in the lands of our exiles to the nations of the world. When we're subservient, then Jacob did the right, Jacob did the right action. Okay. Now, Rav Kahana taught us, and other great rabbis taught, that today we are in a different period of history. Like, wake up, call, like we didn't notice things have changed. Think about what's happened in the last 67 years. We've seen the Jewish people, 7 million strong, coming back. We see economy here. We see the agriculture here. See tremendous blessings here. We see tremendous victories in wars that HaKadosh Baruch Hu helps us. So the idea here is that there is the law of the beginning of the redemption. When Hashem shows us that the redemption has begun, then we have a new set of laws here. And those old set of laws of the exile in the nations of the world, scattered and under their auspices, no longer apply. No longer apply. So therefore, not only that, there's a halachic terminology called Yad Yisrael Tkifa. When I was in yeshiva in the Sinai Desert of blessed memory in Yamit, the head of my yeshiva, his name is Rabbi Yisrael Ariel, and he would give us class over class, many classes. He merited to redeem and to free the Temple Mount back to the Jewish people after 2,000 years. He was one of the paratroopers that freed the Temple Mount from the Arabs. And he brought in stories and stories of his life where he shows that how could someone say today that the hand of Israel is not strong? The hand of Israel reaches all over the world. And we're going to say the hand of Israel is weak? The hand of Israel is able to go to Syria. The hand of Israel is able to go. They're afraid in Iran. All over the world, okay, all over the world, they're nervous. They're afraid. And we have, after God gives us this tremendous gift of the beginning of the redemption, we take the blessing, we take the whole blessing, and we throw it in the garbage. We throw it into a nightmare that's happening here. And what we see in front of our very eyes, this embarrassment, this desecration of God's name here, of these ghetto walls that they're building for the Jewish people. Let me read these words of the Holy Zohar Kadosh. This is an unbelievable chapter here. It's in the portion of the week, Bishalach. We're in the portion of the week of excuse me. I see here that unfortunately I brought the wrong book. It's in the portion of next week, Vayishlach. It's on page 70. Page 70. Take that back. 170. It's on page 170, Zohar Kadosh. I'll paraphrase it. It's unbelievable. Listen closely. Remember this all our lives. Remember these words of the Zohar. We know that in next week's portion that Jacob is fighting the angel, the spiritual mentor of Esau. And the battle is going back and forth, back and forth. Sometimes Esau is victorious, sometimes Jacob. It's really not looking too good. In fact, Jacob is injured. He's injured in his foot. The Rashbam, one of the commentaries on the Torah, he says an unbelievable Torah. Why was his foot? We know that if a person suffers an injury in a certain limb, there's a spiritual connection to why that limb and not another limb. So the Rashbam, who was a grandson of the holy Rashi, he says, what's going on over here? Why was he hit in his leg? He says because of the fact that he ran away from Esau. He ran away from Esau. Unbelievable. It's good that people are still here sitting down or standing up, wherever you might be in the world. But it's an amazing lesson. How do you run away with your feet? So he was injured by the angel of Esau. He was injured in his foot. To teach that lesson. Okay, when does the battle end? Listen closely to the Zohar. When does the battle end? It says, Vaya'avek ish imo ad alot hashachar. He fights with him until the dawn, until dawn. Dawn is considered to be the first light. Now, dawn in halachic terms is a very important term. Give you an example. There's a famous story about the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Admor Zaken, Rav Zalman from Liadi. There's a famous story that he was in the time around 1800 when there was a war going on between France and Russia. Many of the great rabbis sided with Napoleon and the French. Why? Because Napoleon had promised equal rights and enlightenment to the Jewish people if they helped them with the battle. On the other hand, a very interesting stance was taken by the first Lubavitcher Rebbe, who passed away 203 years ago. So he says the following: he was for the Russians. In fact, he did some espionage for the Russians. for the Russians. He said that this is not good for the Jewish people. If they bring down the walls of the ghetto for the Jewish people, this will not be good. This will bring to assimilation of the Jewish people. Unfortunately, many times what holds Jews as Jews is the fact that they're not allowed to mingle with non-Jews. But if you would allow them to do that, the walls break down, and we see, unfortunately, in the last 200 years, which is about the time the Reform movement started, around that time, 200 years ago or so, we see that that's unfortunate. That's a result of what we see today. But anyways, check this out. Anyways, he knew that Rosh Hashanah was coming up, and on Rosh Hashanah, it says, even in the prayers, besides for Jewish law, it says that God decides which countries will be victorious in war, who will conquer, who will be conquered. So one of the big influences of the day, of course, is the shofar, is blowing the shofar. You know, as we say, don't blow it, man, don't blow it. As we say in the Chicago Cubs, don't blow it. So what did he do? Folks, this is a classic. We talked about dawn. Dawn is very important in Jewish halacha. Why? Because if you ever been out, I don't know if you guys are every time up at that time, but if you ever go out in dawn, it's mighty, mighty, mighty dark. Man, you can barely see anything. In the sky, there's a little bit of a light. But besides for that little bit of a light, man, lights out. It's really one of the darkest period of time. But in Jewish law, it is considered to have the status of daytime, which means if there is a commandment that has to be done during the day, for example, lulav and etrog, the 4 species on Sukkot, has to be done during the day. Can't do it at night. So you are allowed to do it. Let's say a person has to go to work, he doesn't have time. You are allowed to do it, halachically correct. You could do it from dawn. A person puts on his talit, his prayer shawl. He puts it on by mistake, too early. He puts it on at dawn. Okay? Does he have to, when it's time, which is about 50 minutes before sunrise, you're allowed to put on the prayer shawl? When it comes that time of 50 minutes before sunrise, does he have to say another blessing? The halacha is no. He does not have to say another blessing, because the fact that he did it during dawn means that it's still considered to be day, and that's the time of the mitzvah. So listen to this. The first Lubavitcher Rebbe, he got up at least 10 guys, I don't know if there were more. They were able to get up so early on Rosh Hashanah, and he blew the shofar at dawn. Anyways, when the other Rebbes came to blow the shofar, approximately 8 hours later, you know what I'm saying, 12 o'clock in the afternoon, one of the Rebbes picked up the shofar and said that the Litvak Rebbe, they used to call the Chabadnikim, they used to call them the Litvakims of the Chassidut, because they use their mind a lot. It's very, very mind. It's less emotion. So therefore, when the Rebbe picked up his shofar, he said, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Litvak Chassid beat us out. There is nothing I could do anymore. And in fact, we know that the French lost that revolution. Okay, so back to what we're saying. It says that the fight continued. There's a fight going on. That is the time of exile. But the Zohar says, when does that stop? It stops at Alot HaShachar. When the dawn hits, now it's a different law. And what happens? Actually, when the first dawn hits, who becomes victorious? It's all over for the angel, the spiritual being, the spiritual angel of Esav. That's all she wrote. The fat lady had already sung. The Zohar says that the Gentiles have power over the Jewish people. The Gentiles have power over the Jewish people ad alot hashachar, until that period of time, ad alot hashachar. Think about it, it's still dark outside, but once that alot hashachar comes, it's a whole, this is the the expression of the Zohar, he talks about this is the redemption of Israel when it comes to, and that's why, if you notice in many places in the Talmud, the redemption of Israel is likened to none other than the dawn. Why is that? Because of this Zohar. This Zohar is unbelievable. So therefore, what are we saying here? Let's just sum it up. What we're saying here is the following: that there are two periods of Jewish history. There are periods of Jacob when we must, and it's the correct thing, to put our heads down and to bow and prostrate ourselves before the non-Jew. And there is a time of Israel. Now it's ironic that this state is not, if you notice, it's not called the state of Jacob. I don't know if you ever caught that one. But they call themselves the state of Israel. Well, baby, if you call yourself the state of Israel, it's about time that we started acting like Israel, Yisrael, and Israel. And this is a concept that is brought down by all the commentaries, that there are two periods of history, there are two names of Jacob. One is Jacob, one is Israel, one is exile, and one is redemption. So therefore, the crux of the problem here, if you really want to know, what is the machloket? What is it? It's that we still, if you're religious or not religious, it doesn't matter here, because they're all put together. They're all on the same sidewalk over here. The question is, what period of time are we in history? The Zohar says that they have control over us. We are subservient to them until this period of time of Alot HaShachar. But once Alot HaShachar comes in, once Alot HaShachar hits, therefore now the Jewish people take over. Now we're in control. That's what it said in the Zohar. I'm going to have to bring it next week because the words are even much stronger than what I'm conveying here. It's really amazing here. And that's really what's going on. This is the dispute between some of the knitted kippah people and some of the black-hatted people. A lot of the black hatters and some of the also knitted kippahs people think that we're still in the exile, in the ghetto somewhere, and therefore our actions are like that. Think about it. When the four boys, and Hashem, once again, Hashem should send them a speedily refuah shlema, but they should be healthy, God willing. And I want to just mention something over here. You know, when you hear on the news, you hear it for a couple of hours. It's a headline, but then it disappears. There's only one problem, that the world doesn't work like Hollywood. You watch a movie, and it's a movie for a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, you know, whatever. And then, you know, it's all over, baby. But life is not like that. Life is not Hollywood, and life is not like the news. So I just looked yesterday in our yeshiva, because these boys are from our yeshiva, from Elon More Yeshiva. I mean, God should have mercy on us. I'm not going to get into the gory details, but one guy, most of them are still in the hospital. Three of them are still in the hospital. One is out, he cannot walk, and there's a long rehab in front of him. It's really, it's a tragedy. But we forget it, and they want us to forget it. What a tragedy, what a desecration of God's name. They're able to do this, and they're still traveling here, the roads here. What payment, what price was paid here? Who is talking about eliminating them from our land, about having them leave, expel them for the land of Israel? No one's talking about this. So anyways, life goes on, unfortunately, and there's so many people that are injured, there's some people are crippled for life, and the beat goes on, and we think that they're playing tennis somewhere, they're swimming around, you know, and it's just not so at all. But anyways, back to what we said. Rabbi Levanon, who's the Rosh Yeshiva and happens to be the rabbi of the Shomron, said very clearly after that attack, he said what should be done is that the city of Shechem should be destroyed. That was his words. Now this is a Rav who's living who's living after the dawn. He understands the words of the Zohar. He understands here very closely. He understands here the words of the Zohar, that we're in a different period of history now, but we're still acting like ghetto, and we're still building these walls over here to protect us, instead of acting like free people and acting like Israel, Yisrael. Okay. Just want to close with one thing. Also remember this. There's a very unusual 2 verses in the Torah. It says that Ishmael, the father of the Arabs, the father of Islam, it says that he was laughing. He was laughing at Isaac. And all of a sudden, he's laughing at Isaac. And his mother says in the next verse, throw them out, because he will not inherit with my son. Throw him out. I don't get it. You know, kids play, whatever they, maybe we're at that age, maybe 15, 16 years old. People laugh at each other, unfortunately. So he's laughing. So you throw him out. To make a long story short, the bottom line of the commentaries is unbelievable Torah. The bottom line of the commentaries, and listen closely. Why were they thrown out? Because of laughing. Ishmael was laughing because, due to the fact that he believed, and he was succeeding in convincing people that the true son of Abraham was, drumroll please, not Isaac. It was none other than him. He's Israel. He is the replacement theory of Israel. He's the continuation of Abraham, of the people of Israel. He will inherit the land of Israel. It's his land. He was laughing. That's why he was laughing. He believed, and he was talking to people, and he was influencing people, and people were beginning to believe. They say if you tell a lie enough times, people will begin to believe it. So therefore, listen what his mother says. You have to get rid of him. Why? Not because he's laughing. What is he saying? Why is he laughing? He's saying that I am Israel. I am the chosen people. I am the land of Israel. It's mine. And therefore she says, you use the specific words, we must chase them, we must expel them out, because they are claiming that this is their land. This is an amazing Torah. Why? Because all throughout history, what do these Muslims do? What do the Arabs do? What do the Ishmael do? They always claim falsehood. They are the sons of Abraham, not us. They are the sons of Abraham, right? Who did Abraham take up to the Mount of Moriah to sacrifice? It wasn't Isaac, of course. It was Ishmael. Interesting. There was never a temple. Did you notice? There was never a temple in Jerusalem that belonged to the Jewish people. Even though in 1927 there's official booklet that was given out by the WAC, the religious establishment of the Muslims. It says there in black and white on their document, which they handed out, that there is no dispute, there is no discrepancy, that the Temple Mount was the site of the Jewish people's first and second temple, 1927. But today, folks, no, it never existed. The temple never existed. So, when did this all start? This replacement. They are God's people. The land of Israel, it's theirs. It belongs to them. Sarah, in her tremendous prophecy, her tremendous wisdom, she saw this at the beginning when he was only joking about it. What are we going to say today when no one's joking about it? That's what they're saying. They believe that we stole their land, and we're acting like it. When the Prime Minister says there's going to be 2 states here, that must mean that we're robbers, that we robbed their land, and therefore we deserve what we get. I can understand the Arabs. Both of us can't understand any of this establishment stuff. So we must remember here that it started started with Ishmael, that the replacement theory here and his mother, we must go in her way, and Abraham agreed to this. They must be expelled. They must go. And God willing, that we know that it's coming around the bend. It's only a matter of time. Their time is limited. With God's help, with our help, God willing, we should see that day coming very soon.
Amen. I want to just get a copy of the, you want to point at that sign there? אל תדאג, אין לנו סכינים. אני רק רציתי לצלם את השלט הזה.
למה זה הסרטון הזה?
זה סתם שיעור שבועי. See, the sign says, ונשמרתם מאוד לנפשותיכם. Stand behind the barriers, protect your lives. That's the disgrace here.